Welcome to Season 2 of Frontline Fridays, brought to you by Ubic. I'm your host, Ron Thurston, and this season we're diving into what it really takes to lead through the uncertainty on the front lines of retail and hospitality, where change isn't theoretical, it's lived every single day. Today's conversation is about leading through chaos, rebuilding trust, and helping teams move forward when the ground beneath them keeps shifting. My guest is Lesley Hawkins, keynote speaker, business strategist, professor, and former head of retail for Adidas Canada, where she led more than 1,200 frontline employees through the post-pandemic reset. Lesley is known for her candid, witty, people-first leadership style and for turning moments of disruption into moments of clarity and action. She's also the host of the Lesley Hawkins podcast, where she explores the personal turning points that shape how we lead. Today, we're unpacking what frontline leaders can learn from navigating massive change and how optimism, courage, and clarity become leadership superpowers when things feel uncertain. So let's jump into it. Hey, Lesley, welcome to Frontline Fridays. I'm very, very happy to have you on the show today.
Thank you so much for the invite. I'm so looking forward to our chat.
So I believe you and I were introduced through Lisa Amlani, a fellow Canadian to you. And so it was during the height of pandemic and chaos, and you were running Adidas in Canada, and you and I we've not had the chance to meet in person, but we will. I'm confident of that in the future as your career continues to evolve, as does mine. So I'm looking forward to that time. But in the meantime, I'm excited to hear your story. I want to jump back a little bit because your path to being a head of stores is not a traditional one. And so you kind of took multiple departments, which in many ways is very helpful as a head of stores because you understand how things work. But give us the brief overview of your career up until today.
Yeah, so Coles Notes version have been working in the sporting goods industry for about 30 years, super dating myself, but most of it was on the golf side of the sports industry and spent many years with other leaders within the industry. Most recently, the last 12 years, we're with Adidas. And mostly on the wholesale side, to be honest, and working with those customers about how could our brand and our products show up in their retail environment. And then towards the end of the pandemic is when I took over retail for Adidas Canada, looking after 1,200 associates and 32 stores. And it was a really, really interesting time in retail.
One that puts you at the kind of peak of taking everything you'd ever learned and putting it into action around leadership. And did you have a passion for golf? Like, how did you end up on the sports side of this business?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a Scot. So other than, learning how to drink Scotch whiskey, you have to learn how to play golf. Kind of part of the indoctrination. And so I've been playing golf since I was a teenager, loved it, had a degree in marketing. So when I, graduated university, it was, okay, I need to find a real job. Managed to find one in the golf industry. And then it just sort of continued. And I, was leader of Adidas Golf at one point, not only as brand director, but then as general manager. And I had been in golf for a really long time. And quite honestly, Ron, I needed a new challenge. And I was working on a project. And we had just introduced a brand new strategic plan for the overall global company. And the Canadian team was like, okay, how do we Canadianize this? How do we bring this down into what does this mean for the Canadian business? And my leader at the time, he created these little work streams. Okay, we're going to work on different parts of the business, different parts of the strategy, and we're going to figure out a way to make them relevant for the Canadian marketplace. And in each of the groups, there was the leader of the actual business, and then there was a disruptor. And so I was a disruptor. That was my role. At that point, I was leading golf, but I was involved in two groups. One was retail and one was outdoor. I loved it. I mean, being the disruptor, it sounds really negative, but it was more about asking all the questions and making sure that those that are in the business didn't get totally lost in what the business looked like. They were used to it day to day. And so, from an outsider perspective, were they working on the right things and were we looking at the strategy the right way? And I loved working on the retail side. There's an energy to it, as you
Yeah.
know, better than anyone.
Yeah.
And so that when an opportunity came up to lead retail, I was very quick to say, yeah, that would be exciting.
And so you, from what I understand, jumped right in and visited every store of the fleet, which is
Yes.
exactly what I would have done, and had some, eh, I think, honest conversations because you're coming through a very, really challenging time.
Right.
As I think you and I chatted about, Canada in particular had more lockdowns than most.
Yes.
And so, how did you? I guess what was your thought process? And then walk us through those store visits. What were the highlights? What were the challenging things you heard?
So it was, you're right. In Canada, our lockdowns and our restrictions for the pandemic were, I mean, they were varied across the country, but were pretty stringent. And so when I started towards the back half of 2021, we still had restrictions. They didn't get lifted until like Q1 of 22. What I adopted was, I mean, the stores were tired. They, hadn't had any investment. But beyond that, the staff was exhausted. It was, as you know well, it was really, really heavy for them. And
Yeah,
so here I was, somebody from golf, somebody from wholesale. You've got 1,200 sets of eyes going, why are we going to listen to you? And what do you know about our life and what we've been through, particularly over the last 2 years? So for me, it was imperative that I get on the road and I spend some time talking to not only the leaders in the store, but as many people as I could in the store
yeah,
and give them an opportunity to speak up. And so I was pretty systematic with me and my clipboard, going and asking lots of questions. And there was 3 questions I asked everybody. Same 3 questions. It didn't matter what rank you were. It was, why are you here? What causes you the most frustration? And if you're in my shoes, what would you do? And the reason I asked those 3 was, one, I was very aware of how intimidating it might be for them to have a title person come and sit with them with pad of paper, feeling like they're being interviewed. I didn't want that. So, why are you here? Gives them an opportunity to talk about themselves, to talk about why, why they love the brand, why they work in retail, what motivates them, what gets them, to work the hours that you
yeah,
need to in retail. And so that sort of opened them up a little bit. The next one of what causes you the most frustration, that one came from the idea that they were going to give me the quick fixes. They were going to give me the ideas of things that if I made these changes quickly, then it would give them buy-in, like those visible changes, right? And then the last one was bit of the heavy lift, which was, if you're in my shoes, what would you do? And that was their permission to dream. Like, if this was your business, it is your pocketbook, your team, like, what would you do differently? By the time we got to that part of the conversation, they were wide open. They were totally open and honest about some of the great ideas they had. The outcome of those conversations, there was some real quick fixes. So, as an example, there was a store in Boucherville, which is South Shore of Montreal, and their staff told me, "Oh, we play basketball together every week." Like, great. One of the people actually on the team was trying to go pro, but we didn't sell any basketball shoes in that store. I'm like, okay, so we could and I know we had inventory and basketball product. It's like, what if we brought that product into this store? It might not fit the usual assortment plan, but I know that this group is going to sell the hell out of that product. And so that was a quick fix where them mentioning it to me being able to change that with the merchandising group. Now all of a sudden they're like, oh, this person's actually listening to me. She's actually walking the walk. And then the big dreaming ideas that helped me build out the strategy. Like, okay, what do we need
hmm,
to do for the next 3 years? What are the big boulders that I have to take care of getting rid of? Or new programs or implementation that we needed to do. It was
I
great.
love it. What I admire most about the questions is the ability to provide a safe space to people that you're speaking to. And so those three questions could be any leader in any business, any touch base that you're having. Why do you love what you do? Maybe in your case for Adidas, it was sports, but could be a variety of other reasons.
Yeah.
But you could ask that question in a corporate environment. What did you study? Why are you here? But the second question around, what frustrates you most is you're giving them permission to share what that is. Not just so like a high five, congrats, your business is good, but like you're outwardly saying, I know things are frustrating. I know
Right.
we didn't do everything right. So tell me what we're not doing right. And
Yes.
if you listen without being defensive about it, or trying to defend maybe the decisions and say, and potentially provide explanation, but the ability to just admit fault is such a trust building exercise. Did you
Yeah.
find that? You must,
Abs-
every store you left, you must have been, people were really happy that you were there.
yeah, I think so. Definitely it was a good test for me and the team because it's a bit vulnerable as a
Hmm.
leader to say, "Okay, give me your wish list, talk to me through," because then you need to deliver on it. And if you can't, you need to be upfront about why you can't. And so I was quite honest with them of, "Hey, I'm going to take this all back. I don't know that we can do all of it right away, but I'll do what we can, and I'll at least be honest with you about like I love that idea, but here's the reasons why that's maybe not as viable." I think the timing of it was also good. I mean, it was a bit selfish as well, right? I was like, I need to jump in with both feet and understand what life is like on the retail floor now versus, the many moons ago that I'd been on the floor. So I need to learn a lot and learn it quickly. So it was selfish from that standpoint. But also, one of the things that I noticed coming out of the pandemic was like during the pandemic, all the decisions were made by the head office. And they needed to because all the protocols were changing so quickly. Decisions were being made quickly. So corporate made the decision, shoved it down to the stores. Okay, stores, just figure it out. Like, do the best you can. And what the downstream of that, unfortunately, after nearly 2 years of being in some kind of restriction, is that the stores became voiceless, right? They were pretty silent and the team was disengaged. So we needed to flip the script and do it quickly and aggressively. So
Yeah.
that's why those three questions and that I call it my listening tour, why it
Yeah.
was a bit of a game changer to at least reset what the potential of our culture could be.
Were there like minor or major shifts in the business that happened after that listening tour? Did you notice something happen?
It was one of many different things that I did at the beginning to try and rebuild the culture. And so I can't say that it was the only thing, but it was a bit of a game changer. Like there was my favorite and yet least favorite stories was from a store manager who had been with the organization for 15 years. He had been a store leader for over a decade and I spent 45 minutes talking with him. And at the end, he said, "Lesley, I need to tell you something." He said, "I've been with this organization for a long time. I've been a leader for a long time. And I've never had anybody in your position ever come and talk to me this way. Give me an opportunity to speak my mind and all of that." I was touched. I was grateful, very kind words. There was also another side, which is, okay, well, that's a problem. It's not just a problem because of the position I was in, but it also meant that I needed to be really deliberate with my team that we have to get out of the office, right? And once again, during the pandemic, corporate was all working from home, and so we had restrictions. We had lots of restrictions. It was no, no, you need to spend some time in other people's shoes. You need to get into the stores. You need to start talking to people and not just directing. And one of the other things we did was, once again, it's one of these really small things, Ron, at the time. I'm sure my team rolled their eyes, but it did end up to be helpful. The corporate team was called RBO, so Retail Back Office. We rebranded
Okay.
to be called RST, which is Retail Support Team. Okay, so it's an acronym. Anybody in the sports world knows we're full of acronyms. And so it shouldn't matter. But the reason I did that was because it was a daily reminder that the corporate team's role was to support the front line, to support the people that were in front of our consumers every day. And that, quite frankly, the store teams knew just as much, if not more, than we did. And that as much as our metrics tell us what's happening and we can read reports, there is nothing better than standing in front of the consumer because our staff will tell you exactly what's happening or not happening.
Well, what I love about what you're sharing, Lesley, is that anyone today, here 2026, that took on a new leadership role, multi-store leadership role, could do the exact same thing. So while it was COVID and there were other secondary, tertiary challenges that layered into that, what you're describing is just great leadership about being in the field, asking questions, being honest, being humble. You're right. You're going to spend some time apologizing for things that may have been done or not done in the past, but you're always moving forward and
Right.
you think about how I can continue to create that momentum, and you could apply the exact same thought process today and you
Yes.
would win. So I love that about it. This is kind of a core foundation of just leadership, good things to do. I want to jump because you had mentioned this kind of signature idea of the power of raising your hand. And in Human Pride, I write a lot about that of like
Yes.
you have to be your own advocate. You
Yeah.
have to be the one to raise your hand. You have to learn how to tell your own story. That none of that's going to be done for you in your career. And so how do you describe that idea of the power of raising your own hand?
My philosophy is really learn from learned experience. And that is, it's power of raising your hand is taking initiative. It's pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. It's trying new things. For frontline leaders, to be honest, I think it's like showcasing your talent in a different way. So there's always guardrails around here's what expectations are for store managers and store leaders about exactly what you do in your daily operations. But raising your hand could be finding a new community partner to work with that might be a little bit different than who you would typically work with, or working with mall management to figure out, let's say, like a different traffic initiative or something like that. It could be finding a new corporate partner to use your store as a gathering place. Like it doesn't have to be huge, but it just needs to be something that is different. And I find when you raise your hand, yes, it's all about pushing yourself, but there is a ripple effect. There's a ripple effect for your team. And um, because they see you doing it. The more they see you doing it, the more they see, like, well, let's try. Like, my favorite question is, what's the worst that can happen? Okay, so it doesn't work. All right, well, we just learn and move on and try something different. The benefit is when your team sees you do that, then that gives them really the authority and the confidence to try it themselves. And
Yeah.
now all of a sudden, you've got a culture of empowered team members. Now this test and learn is sort of inbred in the culture. One of the things is, as a leader, sometimes in the store, you can feel like you're in the middle of nowhere, right? We both live in very
Hmm.
big countries. And so it's sort of out of sight, out of mind. But by taking this, the power of raising your hand, taking initiative, pushing yourself out, trying different things, it does give you an opportunity to also be perceived in a different light. I know it's for sure in the sporting goods industry, but I think it's every industry that innovation is what everyone is looking for. Like, what is the next idea? And it doesn't need to be, I'm creating an app or I'm creating whatever AI engine. It doesn't need to be big. It just needs to be different than today. The consumers today, the demands that they have of retail, as you know, are so different than they were 5, 6 years ago.
Hmm.
And originally, when coming out of the pandemic, it was, if I'm going to get in my car and I'm going to pay those gas prices, you better make it worth my while. That's now softened a little bit. People are happy to go to retail, happy to reconnect with other people, but they want an experience. Well, not every retailer is culturally built to create experiences. So that's the staff's role, I believe. And so I think the more you can raise your hand, the more you can test and learn, the more you can push yourself to come up with new creative ideas and try something different, the better it is for you, for your team, for the culture.
I absolutely agree. Now you are on stages and you're coaching companies, and not just in retail. You have your own show, as I mentioned in the intro. So this idea of what you're describing, is that something that you continue to find as an opportunity across
Mhm.
industry, across category, no matter no matter who you're on stage speaking to, do you
Yes.
find this as an opportunity?
I think everything that I've learned over the years, but particularly over the last 5 years coming out of the pandemic, is that it used to be that change was this one moment in time. We're going to do a restructure. We're going to bring in, a new app, a new operating model, whatever it may be. But the reality is, I've found now is that change isn't the disruption to the normal course of business, that literally change is the normal course of business. And so the pressure on leaders is to create really agile, resilient leaders and team members and create this culture of empowerment. And so yes, you're right. Spend time on stages talking about owning your worth, talking about navigating change with confidence, how you quickly can get in with as a leader of a new team, ideas of how you can create trust, create accountability in pretty short amount of time, and that it's not just buzzwords. It's more of, authentic, true authentic leadership. I don't want you or your audience for 1 second to think that I've got it all figured out, Ron. A lot of this has been from I test and learn, right? I've fallen on my face more than I can care to count, and it's through making those mistakes that I think we continue to learn. And so I've
Yeah.
basically built a framework of here's how I think we can be better leaders. And the more better leaders out there, the more we can, reduce the quiet quitting and move beyond this idea of the quiet resignation, right? Or the great
Yeah.
resignation is what they called it.
Yeah, quiet quitting, great resignation. There's always a new buzz term for it.
There's a
I
new
think,
buzzword.
and often I look at the buzzword, but it requires self-reflection at that point and say,
Yes,
are they actually quiet quitting, or are they quietly doing it because they're uncomfortable telling me the truth? Or have we
exactly.
created an environment where just disappearing from the payroll is a better option for them than honest conversations about career path and about development goals and about getting you where you want to go? And I just think it's easy to assign a phrase or a tagline to something without doing the work on yourself as leaders. For me, it's hard to watch that because I think you just or you're assigning an age, that people of this generation act like X. I had this experience last week at a conference, with people raising their hand in the audience of like, well, young people don't want to work. And as soon as I have to stop the room, and I said, I'm going to challenge you on that. I coach dozens of young college graduates that are studying the retail industry. And trust me, they want to work. And so I think that there's perception versus reality. It's taking accountability versus blame. There's a
Yes.
lot of that goes into this. And you're right, no one has figured out, but I think that it's always evolving, and there's positive change that can come from open dialogue like this too.
Right. And I don't think that the way that I grew up in the corporate world, it wasn't like we had it all figured out, nor did the
Right.
boomers, nor did the next generation. Like everyone's got their own. And quite frankly, I applaud people who not necessarily quietly quit, but who raise their hand and say, this doesn't work. This isn't working for me. And it's not the job, but it's the environment. And if you're a good leader, then you'll hear it and you'll say, okay, hold on. We need to reset. Let me look at myself. What am I doing? And I mean, the first step of great leadership is self-awareness and understanding what your triggers are, understanding how you show up, what lights your fire, what doesn't, what drains your energy, right? What brings you joy, what you value. And it's it has to start with you. And then in the moment you get into, well, it's the generation, they just don't want to work. Like, uh, actually, that's that's a great excuse, but it's an excuse not to look inward.
I absolutely agree with you. So on your show, which at some point I will, you graciously invited me next time I'm in Canada to be on your show, but I want to give you the opportunity to just share some highlights because you talk about the great pivots or when people have needed to make tough decisions in their career. You've done it. I've done it. What have you, through these conversations on your show, what have you learned about leadership and people?
Well, first of all, I'm humbled by the stories that people come and share. That would be the
Mm,
first thing. So the podcast is all anchored on one question, which is what is one pivotal moment in your life? And the stories range. There's no guardrails around what we will and will not talk about. It's really just everyday people talking about what that question means to them. In some cases, it's pivots that they have chosen. In other cases, it's pivots that have sort of been imposed on them. And it's how people have decided to navigate. And it's no different than in leadership. I mean, some of the conversations we have is about leadership, but some conversations are about people being honest about their sexuality, about a cancer situation, of, you know, overcoming a brain injury. As I say, it really spans all kinds of topics. But the idea of how people manage through these pivots is very similar to leadership. It's all about, having hope, making sure that you're putting in the work, that you're uh, being very mindful, thoughtful, you're taking care of yourself, you're asking for help, and you're being brutally honest with yourself about what's working and what's not. I am having so much fun on the podcast. I think I'm quite humbled by the amount that people are sharing and the vulnerability with which they
mm,
are sharing some incredible stories. So
mm.
I look forward to you coming north of the border and joining me off.
It's going to happen. It won't happen in the winter, but it will happen.
You're a very wise man.
And you could take that and turn it into a book of, your own insights into, what these stories have changed about your perception of leadership. And you're right. It's taking care of yourself, surrounding yourself with great people,
Yes.
making decisions that, have a positive long-term impact. And it is really powerful to hear them from people and real people
And
too,
real people. Yeah.
not
But these aren't
uh,
celebrities who,
not yeah, non-celebrity.
yeah, exactly, that they've got an entourage around them and everything else. No, and it's a really good reminder because in all cases, it comes back to you can't do it alone. It's all about who you surround yourself with. And whether it's a pivot you choose or a pivot that's imposed on you, it comes down to you and who you surround yourself with. And the
Yeah.
power of community is impressive.
Well, there's even more being written now about, longevity, of course, and we talk about not necessarily extending life, but what life looks like as we are all aging. And a lot of it is around like healthier people are around others more often. They're
Yes.
they're not home all day. They
No.
have a group of friends.
Yes.
The social part of who we are as humans has a
Right.
significant impact on our long-term health as we
Absolutely.
age. And so
Yes.
you're right, those skills, that's why I could take it back to retail. Like if I'm 20 years old and I'm learning how to speak to strangers all day,
Right?
does that skill translate when you're, much older and still building friends? I think it does.
Yeah, because as you grow your career, it's networking is paramount. I mean, that's right
Mhm.
now how a lot of the job market is working, and being comfortable around new people, introducing yourself, having
Yeah.
conversations. I mean, there is so many skills that you learn on the retail floor that translate into life, whether in business or just in life itself, that are irreplaceable. It's amazing.
It is amazing. How can people find you, Lesley, to book
So
for speaking, coaching, consulting? I think you do many things now.
yes,
Yeah.
exactly. I'm living the portfolio life, as we call it. So you can find me on my website at
Okay.
lesleyhawkins.ca. You can find me on Instagram, Lesley S. Hawkins. You can find me on LinkedIn, TikTok, you name it. I'm kind of on every platform at this point.
Amazing. Amazing. Well, it really was a pleasure. I look forward to spending more time with you, either on your show or, at a trade show somewhere or something. I'm confident you and I will do something together.
I totally agree. Thank you. I
Yeah.
so appreciate your invite to come on here. This has been great.
Good. Pleasure. Thank you, Lesley.
Thank you.
Lesley's such a good example that when you lead with humanity, even chaos can become a catalyst for growth. And for everyone listening, here's your challenge for the week. When things feel uncertain, don't shrink. Raise your hand. Speak up, lean in, and look for one way to bring clarity to your team. Because when people feel seen and supported, momentum follows. Thanks for tuning in, and a special thanks to Ubik, the presenter of Frontline Fridays. Ubik is the AI-powered platform that helps retail and hospitality leaders connect, train, and empower their teams. Ready to make your frontline your competitive advantage? Visit Ubik.com. That's YOOBIC.com to learn more. Until next time, keep leading boldly and keep turning that chaos into clarity.